satisfied. Oh, one time.
Hey, what's up? PDXguitarfreak here, and I'm about to share with you some of the patches I've created for the Line 6 Pod HD500. I've had it for about 5 months now, and by no means have I mastered this thing yet because it's capable of a lot, but I'm really happy with the patches I've created. The clips you're about to hear were performed using this Ibanez S420 guitar with the stock INF pickups. And obviously, you know, the type of guitar you're using, the type of pickups, these are all factors that are going to, you know, go into the way it sounds when you hear it. You know, what amp you're running it into, or your sound card. The way that you fret the strings, the way you attack it with the pick, the way you mute the unwanted strings, all those things are going to impact the way you hear it when you play it. When I'm recording, I use my amp, which is a PDXguitarfreak half stack, which is the 412 cab and the 120 watt head, as a monitor. But you won't hear that in the clips I'm about to play. You're only going to hear what the sound card picks up. But the reason I mentioned the amp that I'm using is because when I created these patches, I created them so they would sound good through the amp, which is going to sound different than when you hear it on the sound card. Okay, I mean, I'm happy with the way it sounds on the sound card, but I wish you could hear the way it sounds through the JSX, because I'm really happy with the way it sounds. I mean, it just blows me away. And I don't think the sound card really picks that up in a way that I'd like, but it's close enough from the recordings that I'm using, or it's good enough for the recordings I'm using, in my opinion. So I hope you can take these patches that I'm about to share and you can tweak them so they fit with your guitar and your amp and your computer sound card, etc. You can download them at the following website, the Line 6 website. And if that should change, I'll update it in the notes. All right, enough of me blabbering. Let's hear some clips. Dave's main tone is the tone that I've been using a lot for my YouTube videos. It's my primary tone. I find it to be good for both rock and metal stuff, and for both rhythm and lead playing. And actually, this is my preferred tone for lead playing. So when I show you some of the patches later that I use, other high gain patches, those are primarily for rhythm. But I'll come back to this one pretty much all the time for lead, but again, I like this for both rhythm and lead. I'm using 2 amplifiers here. It's actually the same amplifier. They call it a tread plate, which is modeled after a Mesa Boogie dual rectifier. I set those up with moderate gain, one with mids a little bit lower than average, and one with mids a little bit raised. You'll see that I get a lot of mileage out of the tread plate amps. For effects, I've got a noise gate that's always on, a tube screamer, a classic tube screamer, which can be added for extra gain when needed, a script phase, which is modeled after the famous MXR Phase 90, heard prominently on early Van Halen stuff, and then I've got a plate reverb and a standard digital delay. Now here is the sound with all of the effects kicked in for lead playing.
foot switches, if you have the floor model, I have the foot switch 1 set to kick in the tube screamer, foot switch 2 to kick in the phaser, and foot switch 3 kicks in both reverb and delay. The next patch is Dave's tone wah. This is basically the same as my main tone, but the purpose here is to add wah. So the amp is the same, the amps are the same, the 2 tread plates. For effects it's the same, but the phase is dropped out, so I can add in what they call a chrome wah, which is based on the old Vox V8 47 wah pedal. And if you're wondering why I simply didn't add the wah to my Dave's main tone patch as an additional option, it's because I ran out of DSP, which is the digital signal processing, and when that happens, it basically is telling you that you've pushed the unit to its processing limit. There are times where you can combine more effects than what you're seeing with this patch, but it depends on the types of effects you're running. Sometimes you can run out of DSP really fast if you're using certain effects, and sometimes you can have 7. For foot switches for the Dave's tone wah, foot switch 1 is set to kick in the tube screamer, foot switch 3 kicks in the delay and reverb, and foot switch 4 activates the wah, but of course you'll need an expression pedal to use the wah, and if you've got the floor model, you've got the built-in expression pedal. If you don't have that, then it's not going to do anything when you click on the wah. I designed this one with more of a late 80s thrash tone in mind. For amps, again, I'm using 2 tread plates, identically voiced, albeit with different mics, with the gain cranked on the amp. For effects, the noise gate is always on, as are two parametric EQs set differently. And next we have, again, the classic tube screamer, which can be added for extra gain. We've got the script phase, again, the MXR Phase 90 replication. And then we've got tape echo for leads, which is based on the classic Maestro Echoplex, like Mr. Van Halen used to use. So here is that sound of when all the effects are kicked in, the tube screamer, the Echoplex, and the Phase 90 on the Mesa Rhythm Thrash patch. Now I should preface this with the fact that I don't really use this patch for lead playing. I just figured I had DSP left over for the patch, so I thought I'd throw some stuff in there for people that want to give it a shot and stick within the patch for lead playing too. So this is what it sounds like. For foot switches, number 1 kicks in the tube screamer, number 2 kicks in the phaser, and number 3 kicks in the Echoplex. Marshall JCM 800 patch was created for more of a low to moderate gain tone. For example, if you want to play maybe AC/DC style stuff, but I've also set it up so that when you kick in the overdrive pedal, you can get you know, a little bit more gain for a moderate tone, early 80s kind of tone. For amps, I used the Brit J800, which is modeled after the Marshall JCM 800, hence the name of my patch. And then I added a second amp channel here with just the preamp section of another JCM run into the mixer. Again, I only used moderate gain here with the amp, so you can play AC/DC style chords and riffs without being, you know, overly distorted. And then again, you can kick in the overdrive pedal when needed. When all of the effects are added, it almost has that cliched early 80s over-chorused sound. It reminds me of walking into the Guitar Center when I was first learning to play guitar in the early 80s as a kid, and hearing that sound. So let's talk about the effects. We have a parametric EQ on the full amp side, just to give it a little more specific high end to it, and that's always on. And then we have a tri-chorus, which is based on the classic ditronic stereo tri-stereo chorus that many studio musicians in the 80s used, like Steve Lukather. The overdrive is based on the classic early DoD overdrive preamp. It's got a very smooth sound to it. And actually, I was going to throw in the Tube Screamer because I just love that pedal, but I ran out of DSP. But the DoD worked perfect for this situation, and I think it's a great alternative. We've also got the Chrome Custom wah again, based on that classic Vox early wah, and then a digital delay with modulation, which basically is a digital delay pedal that adds a little bit of chorus to the delayed output, which is a cool effect. Pretty subtle though. And again, when you add all of the effects, well, put aside the wah, when you add the chorus, the overdrive, and the delay with modulation, it gives you that very cliched early 80s chorusy sound, which is kind of fun to play with. For foot switches, number 1 kicks in the overdrive, number 2 kicks in the chorus, and number 3 kicks in the delay, and then number 4 kicks in the wah. And again, you'll need an expression pedal to actually use the wah. Well, that was part 1 of my video on the Pod HD500 patches I've been creating. In part 2, I've got about 6 more patches to show you, 5 or 6 more. One of them specifically for my clean tone, and then I've got a few for some harmony guitar playing and some funk patches, wherein I'll introduce you to the growler, which is a really cool effect that I'm having a lot of fun with. Make sure to check it out.